It's a pretty tough country to do business, right? I mean,
It can be.
some people say it's the fitness center for
Yeah, I've heard
European
that. It's the
countries.
gym. Yeah. China is challenging, but everywhere has its own difficulties too. I mean, again, I would say those four areas of education, life science, financial services, and food.
Welcome to the European Guanxi podcast. We bring together young professionals, scholars, and experts to talk about the evolving relationship between the EU and China. If this is something that interests you, be sure to catch our new episodes every 2 weeks. And welcome to the European Guanxi community. And today I'm very honored to be here with Tadhg O'Callaghan, the director of Enterprise Ireland in China. Thank you very much for coming on the podcast.
Nice to meet you.
So today we're going to talk about the relationship between Ireland and China, and maybe also the European Union and China. And I want to start off the podcast with a little bit of your personal career, since we have a lot of young listeners who also are starting to develop a career in EU-China relations. And so I want to know a little bit what brought you to where you are today. What were sort of the steps on the way?
Yeah, so I would like to say that I had this sort of long-term plan to come to Asia, but it was somewhat accidental. So I went to university in the United States actually after graduating from secondary school in Ireland, and around 2008, the global economy wasn't doing so great. So I was looking around for a job basically, and I saw teaching English in Korea as an opportunity. So I moved to Korea in 2009. And then I was doing teaching for a few years, and then I decided to start a business with two friends of mine. And it was more so out of wanting to do something different rather than having a big desire to get into business. And that grew and was quite challenging, but brought it about as far as I could. And then after a number of years, I saw an opportunity with the Irish government in Singapore for a job related to food promotion across Asia. And I applied. I actually missed the deadline. The deadline was Friday at 5 p.m. I submitted over the weekend, but I figured they wouldn't check until Monday morning anyway, so it worked out. And then I worked with them. That organisation is called Board BIA. And then I was with them for about 2 years. And then I joined Enterprise Ireland about a year and a half ago. So our organisation then is a little bit different. We help businesses across all sectors, and we fund a lot of companies within Ireland. And then in the offices abroad, we help them find buyers and send back market intelligence and things like that.
Yeah. I didn't say you're also fluent in Korean, I think, right?
Yeah, well, so I lived there a long time. I lived there about 12 years.
Yeah.
And so, I didn't start studying it properly until about 5-6 years in. 'Cause it's quite a challenging language, as is Chinese, obviously. So yeah, my listening would be a lot better than my speaking. If you're talking about me, I know what you're saying. I would say is my thing.
Could you tell us a little bit about Enterprise Ireland, what your job is, what your role is in promoting Irish business in China? What do you do?
Yeah, so we're a trade development agency, and we've two main functions. The first, back in Ireland, is to invest in Irish companies and help them develop. We invest a lot in R&D, and we're actually quite a large venture capital entity in and of ourselves. So we put money into Irish companies, usually at the pre-seed stage, and we help them grow. Then our second main function is in finding markets around the world. So we have 42 offices outside of Ireland, and our job then is to find the right partners for them. So in Enterprise Ireland, we kind of have a mantra. It's the right client in the right market at the right time. So, we have about 4,500 clients, and not every client is going to be able to sell in every market. So it's up to us to find the right fit, make sure that our companies have the right capabilities going abroad, and then pairing them at the right time with the partners that make most sense. So as I mentioned, we work across a broad range of sectors. This does vary a little bit around the world. So what we do in the UK would be quite different to what we do in South Africa or in Vietnam. But yeah, any Irish export essentially is covered by us.
Mm-hmm. I imagine that particularly in China, it's a pretty tough country to do business, right? I mean,
it can be.
Some people say it's the fitness center for
I've heard
European
that. It's the
countries.
gym. Yeah, I think there's something to that. I think if you can succeed in China, you can more or less succeed anywhere. I really think some of the difficulties in China are more to do with geography and culture rather than anything distinctive about China. I mean, I worked in Korea. That's a very challenging market. Japan is a very challenging market. And that's as much because it's very far from home, the culture is very different, and they can lean towards protectionism. So, China is challenging, but everywhere has its own difficulties too. I mean, US has its difficulties at the moment. It's a hyper-competitive place. But China, if you have the right fit and you spend time with trying to identify the right partner, it can be a fantastic market.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, maybe let's develop that a bit further. What makes a company or a business China ready? Everybody talks about the market being so cutthroat, everybody undercutting prices, even making losses. In the electric vehicle sector, for example.
Yeah. So you have to have a world-class product or service to begin with. You have to have something that the Chinese don't really have, or don't readily have, or can't do in quite the same way. So you have to be strong to start with. You can't be speculative, and you need to have done a little bit of research on the market already. Beyond that, then you need to have a commitment on the ground. You need to at least visit the place regularly, ideally have a physical presence, and meet people regularly, because communicating by email or video call doesn't really work in China. I think then as well, you need to have patience and flexibility. It might take a few years. We've had some clients that have been kind of knocking on the door of China for 2 or 3 years, and only now it's kind of coming to fruition. And you need to have some flexibility. You need to be able to adapt for the local market. It's not good enough to say, oh, well, we did this in the Middle East and it worked, or we did this in America and it worked. China is China. It has its own requirements. So there's still gaps. There's loads of gaps where Irish companies can succeed. It is challenging, but nowhere is easy.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe let's talk a little bit about the political side of things. We had early in 2026 the first European visit of a European head of state in China. The Irish Prime Minister Michel Martin visited China in January, I think.
That's right, first week.
Met Xi Jinping, met Li Keqiang, and the chairman of the National People's Congress, Zhao Leji, attended various events connecting Chinese investment in Irish investment in China. So in light of this visit, how do you see very broad, how do you see the Sino-Irish relationship at the moment in this day and age?
I think we have a very good relationship at the moment. Obviously, we're within the EU, so everything that we do is sort of with the backdrop of the European Union. Within that relationship, we see ourselves as somewhat of a bridge. That's a role that Ireland has played for decades, really. We're kind of a bridge for the United States into Europe, or kind of a bridge for the EU now into the UK. And I think we can fulfill that role to a degree with China as well. Ireland is pro-business, we're pro-trade. I think culturally we're quite a practical people. We're not very dogmatic. We're easy enough to get on with, I think, generally. And I think the Chinese are open to trade as well. And I think they want to. There's been some negativity over the last maybe 5 to 10 years in the relationship between China and the EU. I think China and the EU are ready to kind of to move on a little bit and get a little bit closer and see what common ground there is. So Ireland is very good at finding common ground. It's in our DNA, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially now this, geopolitical environment with everything that's happening at the moment.
Yeah.
We see new geoeconomic tensions reshaping global value chains, reshaping the global economy. Many countries are trying to rethink what kind of global trade paradigm we're moving into, trying to find their niche in global markets. How is Ireland adapting to that? Specifically, how's the Sino-Irish relationship, adapting to these global shifts?
It is difficult as a small country as well. We're kind of we're swimming in the waters. We're swimming in very turbulent waters that we don't really have much influence on. So we have to be nimble and we have to adapt quite quickly. I think for us as a country, if we stick to our principles as being pro free trade and pro innovation and pro cooperation, I think we'll be able to work out. It's taking time to listen to our partners and see what it is they want. So what is it exactly that the Americans want? What is it exactly that the Europeans want? And what do the Chinese want? And then we need to sort of figure out where we fit in. I think you need to, these days, especially with what's happening in Iran and everything else, you have to be you have to be very flexible. You have to kind of think on your feet. And in our organization, it's important that we develop abilities within our companies that they'll be able to adapt. So they'll be able to change their product, or they'll be able to reduce costs, or they'll be able to move to a new market, or and so we have to make sure that our companies have this nimbleness and are light on their feet. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe let's delve into that. So how does Enterprise Ireland then help companies adapt with this environment?
The key thing for us as an organization is to be very close to the client, and we have been very good at that. So we have what are called client advisors back in Ireland, and they would work with the client day to day on helping building their capability and informing them about maybe new trends, or helping them with funding and grants. And then in the markets, in the 42 offices abroad that I mentioned, our job is to send back latest information, and it's also to work closely with these clients too. So we talk to them every evening. We meet them when they're in the market. We arrange visits for them. So being close and having a very good relationship with our clients is key, because we have this level of trust that's been built up, and then because of this close daily working relationship, we'll be able to get that information to them, and then they can adapt. And our organization as well has improved over the years as well. We're able to I think COVID was very helpful actually in that way. We're able to give funding where it's needed, and we're able to, fill in the gaps when there's a crisis. So I think the trust and the communication between us and our clients is central to that.
Ireland has very strong companies working in innovative technologies, renewable energies. I think solar energy and offshore are two maybe key areas, with, for example, Katsus and Dublin Offshore, which are some of your partner companies, I believe. What drives Irish companies in this sector, or more generally, to invest in China? Because Chinese companies are not sleeping; they're in this market as well. So, where is the niche for Irish companies? Where do they see their added value in the value chain?
Yeah, so China has become a giant in renewable energy, particularly in this sector. We've seen a bit of a retreat, really, from America in renewable energy, and China has definitely filled that void. For us, we're not going to provide a solution the whole way through the value chain for renewable energy. We're not going to be producing windmills and all the software and all the different components that come with it. But what we will do is we'll have one particular part or two particular parts where we have built an excellent capability. So you mentioned Castus and Dublin Offshore Wind. Both of those companies, what they're offering is really quite niche and quite specialist. Now, I don't have the technical background. I can give you very sort of a superficial explanation. But Castus, for example, it's a chemical, it's a liquid that's used on the panels, and it helps the panels be more efficient, and it helps them stay functioning for longer. Then Dublin Offshore Wind, it's a particular part in the weighing system that helps it attach to the shore. As I said, I don't have the technical background, but what I'm clear on is that they offer something niche and particular, and the Chinese don't have it. And it's something that's not that easy to replicate. No, someone might say, well, in a few years, the Chinese or the Japanese or whoever else might be able to do it themselves. That's true, but that's always been true. And it's our job then to help the companies get to the next step, the next higher technology piece, the next software, the next component that we can develop. There's always a way, and Irish companies are very nimble. And like I said, we have a lot of these excellent SMEs. We don't have many famous giant companies, but we have lots of small, medium-sized companies with a very particular offering, and they do well here.
Yeah. I was gonna say, there is the whole debate around, at the moment we still have some niches, very specialized products in Europe, in which we have our key hidden champions, I think they're called sometimes. We in Germany as well have some of these companies that do some certain glue or some screws.
Yeah, the Mittelstand, I think they're called. Yeah.
But even they, nothing's safe. One might say, right? So, how do you view this whole debate between, on the one hand, how do we maybe shield ourselves against Chinese competition entering the European market? I think recently we've got new figures on Chinese export to euros now, which are records high now that America has sort of closed off. So where do Irish companies, and where should we find the balance between, dealing with that rising competition and at the same time continuing collaboration in R&D and, collaboration between companies?
So, in terms of politics or policy, that's not really what our organization does. I would say that everywhere we operate, we do expect some fairness and a level playing field. So, I think the European Union and Ireland, we would expect that our companies are given a fair chance to compete effectively in the market here. And I think that has been changing, and I think it is easier now for foreign companies to operate. In terms of collaboration versus being protectionist or protecting our own companies, there was a time when the British were worried about the Americans spying on them for their cotton loom technology. Like, this has been going on forever, and you just have to adapt. Like, the world it's constantly churning, and you just have to make sure that you're a little bit ahead. There's no point in crying over the way things used to be. That you just have to adapt to how they are and try and get ahead for where they will be. So there's a lot we can do, and a lot of Chinese companies are entering into the European market, and we can help them. So if they're building factories or if they're opening sales offices or whatever else, we can help them. Now, our sister agency, the IDA Ireland, they're tasked with attracting FDI, and they've done a very good job attracting FDI into Ireland from China. Where we would fit in is if there's a Chinese company that needs some capability or something in Europe, we have Irish companies, particularly construction and engineering companies, that can help them. So it's finding a way to fit together. Yeah.
Okay, let's maybe talk about a little bit more light topic as well. I mean, Ireland is also a country with a lot of soft power. It's very popular around the world. Also, I think increasingly with Chinese travelers, culture lovers. So, for example, I believe that education is one of the biggest exports that Ireland has to China. So, Chinese students studying in Ireland at Trinity College and whatnot. I think there are also Chinese tourists, are discovering Ireland as a traveling destination. So how would you assess Ireland's soft power in China, particular in areas such as education, culture, people-to-people exchange?
It's very strong. To use a cliche, we punch above our weight. I've been in China about 5 months, and I've been quite surprised by how well known Ireland is. By contrast, I've worked in Korea and I've worked in Southeast Asia. There's many countries, but they might not have heard of Ireland, or they would have heard of Iceland. So in China, that they already know us and they know things about us is really, it's great, and they have a good impression. Recently at Chinese New Year on the main TV show, Westlife were on it, a pop band from the 90s, which is, for us, for my generation, is surreal. So we're known, and we're known in a good light as well, and I think Chinese people and Irish people, they get on very well. We're both fairly easygoing people. I think we've a kind of a mischievous sense of humor as well, and I think we get on well. Now, Irish people, it always boggles our mind the scale and size of China. There's 5 million people in Ireland, which is a third tier city probably in China. So we don't have much in common in terms of scale, but culturally we get on very well, and I think Ireland has a lot to offer as well. We don't have any preconceived notions about ourselves. We don't have any colonial baggage that other countries might have. So I think we get on well. Yeah, we have a lot to offer.
Yeah, is that something you cover as well in your operations as Enterprise Ireland? Is that the
Sorry, you asked about education as well. Yeah. So the cultural appeal is a big part in convincing students to come to Ireland, and I think the safety that they experience in Ireland and the warm welcome that they get in Ireland. Now, they don't particularly like the rain and the cold in Ireland, but there's not much we can do about that. So with education, we try and explain what we have and what we're offering is, and many Chinese students go for that. And we've developed in recent years as well. They're called transnational education programs. So joint colleges or joint programs where Chinese students will study in China, but the education and the curriculum is provided by Irish universities. So a lot of universities will partner with a Chinese university, and then Irish professors and the Irish curriculum will be provided. and then they'll graduate with an Irish degree, but they'll stay in China. So this has been a nice kind of, let's say, compromise or best of both worlds that we've developed, or as the Chinese have developed with us over the last number of years. And it's not just Ireland. Many European countries, the Americans, the Australians, they're doing this as well. But it's been very effective for us, and I think we're doing very well compared to our peers.
Yeah. Okay. Let's to close the podcast, let's look a little bit ahead of where the relationship is going, particularly Ireland as part of the European Union, where we going in the future. Maybe returning also a little bit to the whole economic side and what we discussed before about the politics as well. So in terms of trade and the investment, where do you see sort of the sectors in China that offer the greatest potential for Irish enterprises? Obviously, that's a hard question. I mean, that's for companies to find out themselves probably. But what is sort of the future of Ireland-China trade, given that China might enter other sectors that Ireland is specializing in at the moment as well? And
yeah, it's a good question. So you answered it a little bit. It is sort of up to the companies, and then when they come to the market, we try and guide them as best we can. I would say that the four main areas really would be education, life sciences, fintech, financial services, and food. Now, Enterprise Ireland, we don't cover food, but we cover pet food and food ingredients and agri-tech and areas like that. I think in general, demographics is a pretty good guiding light. So the average Chinese consumer is older, wealthier, more middle class. And that can be instructive, They want a higher standard of living than maybe their parents did, and certainly their grandparents. So that gives an opportunity for our medical device companies, our supplements companies. It also helps with pet food because people have more pets these days. They're more middle class, and they're often having fewer children as well. They're more likely to have pets than kids, some people. So we have really high quality food. We've really high quality pet food that fits in. Then education as well. There are fewer children, but the parents of those children want to have a higher class education for them, again, than the previous generation. So that's where our universities can fit in. And then as China expands, they need a way to send their capital abroad and bring their capital back. And we have financial services companies that can help in that, particularly through Hong Kong. We've many Irish companies that have a presence in Hong Kong. And we can help the Chinese as they expand abroad and, as I say, as they repatriate their capital from abroad. So, the demographics and the way China wants the direction that China wants to go in is helpful for us as a guiding principle. So we can see what our capabilities are, and then we can plan forward and see where we can meet them. So again, I would say those four areas of education, life science, financial services, and food would be the main areas.
And where do you see Enterprise Ireland going in 2026? What are sort of your goals for the near future?
So, we're not a business. We're not a private enterprise. So it's not as if we're looking for, 50% increase in profit or anything like that. What we want is steady growth for our clients, and we want predictable growth as well. And we want to be as good as we can be as an office, or 3 offices, Beijing, Shanghai, Hong Kong. We want as well there to be open communication. I think there's been a problem in the last number of years that the mood music around China has become quite dark, and I think it's more negative than reality. Now, it's not our job to give a rosy picture or a negative picture. Our job is just to give clear communication. So for this year, I want us to be able to be an interlocutor between our businesses and Chinese businesses, and give clear information. Sometimes that information is negative, sometimes it's positive, but open communication is our main goal for this year. And then we would like more Irish companies to enter the market. And I think even more than that, we want more companies to be able to scale in the market. So entering the Chinese market is great, but to be able to grow is ultimately what we want. And I think just even yesterday, we have a new Irish company in Hong Kong, Netfasa. They have an Internet of Things company that's involved with shipping logistics. And they just opened a new presence in Hong Kong, which is fantastic. But our goal now is to make sure that they grow. So if their profits are X this year, we want them to be 1.5X next year and 2X the year after that, and so on. So that's really what we want. We want companies that can scale in the market.
That's very, Very strong message to end on, I think. Thank you so much
No
for
problem. Thank you very
joining
much.
us on this podcast. And also thank you so much for listening, and see you in 2 weeks with the next episode.